Let's get right to it. With us from Washington, RNC Communications Director Sean Spicer. Sean, thanks so much for being with me.
Happy birthday. I consider this my present to you.
All right, don't go easy on me, though. So come on, Sean. Nobody's talking about deregulating Wall Street. I mean, Sarbanes-Oxley, Dodd-Frank. Romney has said numerous times he wants to get rid of both of those. Is there some spin that I'm missing in all this?
Yeah, there is. I'm
okay,
sorry.
Please tell me.
So if you believe that Dodd-Frank is crippling the ability of banks and institutions to lend to small businesses, to help the financial to help lending, and you want to get rid of things that are hurting the the lending industry, then that doesn't mean you want to get rid of all the regulations. I don't understand. I mean, just because you want to get rid of a bad law does not mean that you want to throw out the entire regulations.
That's disingenuous. They have said numerous times we need to do away with these regulations, these pesky regulations that are that are stopping the job creators, right? I mean, come on, they've said that.
So let me throw it back at you. Hold on, one question. Prior to Dodd-Frank, which was a year ago, are you telling me that there was no regulation on Wall Street? It was the OK Corral on Wall Street. They could do whatever they wanted?
No, I'm saying that on CBS, he said he wanted to do away with regulations like Dodd-Frank.
No,
and then he says nobody's talking about regulations. I mean, come on.
No, you're equating the fact that Dodd-Frank is a flawed, bad law to getting rid of every regulation, and that there is no correlation between getting rid of all the regulations and getting rid of one bad, flawed law that is preventing lending from happening.
Okay, so let me just wait a second. I just want to make sure I'm clear on this, Sean, because I think you're trying to do an admirable job. So when you say you don't want to do away with a regulation, you're not really saying you want to do away with a regulation, if I understand what you're saying. That's what you're saying.
I'll be very clear. That prior to the passage of Dodd-Frank, there were there were countless regulations that deal with Wall Street and lending and financial institutions. On top of that was added Dodd-Frank, which is a bad additional regulation that hampers financial lending. And so we are opposed to that one.
Right, and very clearly we've heard about repealing regulations and doing away with regulations. But actually, Sean, I want to move on to something else that you were just talking about, because I've heard this line before about, hampering lending to small business, and I don't think the numbers bear that out. But doesn't putting your money in an offshore account actually change the amount of capital that a bank has available to lend to small businesses? So if you're really concerned about making sure that there is money flowing out of the banks to small businesses, maybe you wouldn't keep it in the Bahamas or Bermuda. You'd actually keep it in the United States?
I think it's frankly a silly question, because if you look at anyone who owns a 401k or a pension system, a pension plan, funds are put all over in terms of if you're invested in international funds, whatever. So it's frankly a silly question.
Well, come on, Sean. It's not a silly question. The banks have complained time and time again about the new capital requirements, the requirements of the amount of capital they're actually now required to have to make sure that we don't go back to where we were. I don't think that's silly at all.
Okay, then look through the financial disclosure forms of the chair of the Democratic National Committee, of countless White House folks who all own international stocks or portfolios that are part of their 401k or their pension plans, and claim that all of those people are doing bad things as well. I mean, it's a silly, silly question.
All right. Well, so since we are in the season of silliness, this was supposed to be the time that we were going to elevate the campaign, talk about the issues, but I want to take a look at Paul Ryan's Veep debut interview on Fox.
The budget plan that you are now supporting would get to balance when?
Well, there are different. The budget plan that Mitt Romney's supporting gets us down to 20% of GDP government spending by 2016.
I get that, but what about balance?
Well, I don't know exactly what that balance is, because we haven't. I don't want to get wonky on you, but we haven't run the numbers on that specific plan.
Right.
Okay. Let's talk about this. So Paul Ryan is saying, I don't want to get too wonky on you. This is a little different than what he was saying, obviously, just a few days ago. and essentially could not give specifics. And time and again, this has been a problem from the Romney campaign, that we can't seem to get the specifics. So how can he assure us, I mean, that he's going to be able to accomplish this, but can't give us the specifics? And the specifics that we have had actually show that I think it's 10 years before we actually get there, and that frankly the numbers are not adding up, either on Paul Ryan's plan or Governor Romney's plan.
Well, when you have a president that's adding $5.2 trillion of new debt in the last 3 years and a Democratic Senate that hasn't passed a budget in 3 years, it's a little hard for us to get our arms around that.
2 weeks ago.
But that being said...
And the House couldn't pass it, but let's, you know...
Wait, the Senate did what?
The Senate was actually able to get something passed, and the House has rejected it.
No, actually, the Senate hasn't passed a budget in over 3 years.
That's actually not true. But go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, it may be your birthday, but we can't give you a free fax. So
nice try,
here's the thing, that when... again, this goes back to, do you want to be honest with people? When you put a budget together and you lay it all out, it needs to be scored. You put the policies in it. And so to minimize this and say, okay, well, gosh, you're putting together this, can't you tell us right off the bat? It is a very complicated deal. He's put his plan out on the table. He actually passed a budget as chairman of the Budget Committee.
But Sean, wait a second. Let's not do revisionist history and mythological thinking here, because the budget that was passed out of the House, some of the Republicans in the Senate didn't want to vote on. It's not just that Democrats had some problems with it, and you now have members of your party running away from their vote in support of that budget because it is so wildly unpopular. And I want to actually talk about Medicare, because that's obviously been part of this budget conversation. Okay. And Politico reports today that the House Republicans are so jittery about the budget, the Ryan budget, that John Boehner actually had to do a conference call to calm people's fears. So really, you're going to hang your hat on the Ryan budget?
Well, there's two things that I find very interesting. One, the only reason we're talking about the Ryan budget is because it actually passed. It was a budget, it passed. The president's budget went down 97-0 in the Senate, and I don't think it did any better in the House. So when you talk about two different budgets, the only one that's actually passed anything is the one put forward by Paul Ryan.
You and I both
when you
know...
talk about it, hold on. Let me just answer. But then with respect to Medicare, this is a plan that the President of the United States himself said, Paul Ryan's a serious guy. I give him a lot of credit for putting it out there. He's putting serious reforms on the table. Paul Ryan's the only guy, Paul Ryan and now Mitt Romney, the only guys with an actual plan that you can go out and read that talks about saving and protecting Social Security.
That's actually not true, Sean. The President's plan actually would actually cut the very same amount that Paul Ryan talks about, and it would go back into lowering costs and improving the system right now, not 10 years from now. Sean, I'm sorry, we're going to have to leave it there.
Where can I find? Just tell me where I can find the plan.
You can find it online.
Plan?
Same place you can find Mitt Romney's plan. You can go to the
Mitt Romney's plan's at mittromney.com.
You can find it on the White House website, and you can find it on the Obama campaign website. The plan is there. You may not like it, but that doesn't mean it's not there. All right.
It's not.
I will send the URL to you.